For some of the richest celebrities in the world, owning just one mansion isn't enough. Some have purchased neighboring properties to create enormous private compounds. Others own hundreds, or even thousands, of acres surrounding their homes. One Hollywood actress went even further and bought a huge portion of an actual town. We're counting down 10 celebrities whose properties are so enormous that they practically own entire neighborhoods. Number 10. Taylor Swift. Watch Hill, Rhode Island. At number 10 is Taylor Swift. Taylor has built an impressive real estate portfolio across the United States, with properties in New York, Nashville, Los Angeles, and Rhode Island. But one of her most famous homes sits high above the Atlantic Ocean in Watch Hill, Rhode Island. In 2013, Taylor reportedly paid approximately $17.75 million in cash for the historic oceanfront mansion known as High Watch. And this isn't exactly your average beach house. The property sits on approximately 5 acres of prime oceanfront land and reportedly includes hundreds of feet of private shoreline. The mansion itself contains around 11,000 square feet of living space, with multiple bedrooms, fireplaces, and spectacular views of the Atlantic Ocean. Its location is particularly impressive. Watch Hill is a small and extremely exclusive coastal community filled with historic homes and wealthy residents, and Taylor's mansion sits on one of its most prominent pieces of land. The property became so closely associated with the singer that she even referenced its history in her song The Last Great American Dynasty. But despite Taylor's enormous estate, she doesn't actually own Watch Hill. Her property simply dominates one of its most exclusive sections, and compared with what's coming next, 5 acres is almost nothing. Number 9. Tom Cruise. Clearwater, Florida. At number 9 is Tom Cruise. Instead of buying an enormous ranch, Cruise took a different approach. He essentially secured his own section of a luxury residential building. Cruise owns an enormous 2-level penthouse in downtown Clearwater, Florida, and the numbers are incredible. The residence reportedly spans approximately 20,800 square feet. That's larger than many celebrity mansions. Cruise reportedly paid around $9.6 million for the penthouse. But he didn't stop there. He reportedly spent another $1.5 million purchasing 3 additional units inside the same building, reportedly intended for relatives or members of his staff. The main residence reportedly features a rooftop deck, infinity pool, gym, home theater, and spectacular views. And perhaps the most Tom Cruise feature imaginable, a private garage with a car elevator. The residence has also reportedly included space for a flight simulator. So while Cruise doesn't own an entire neighborhood, he has essentially created his own private luxury enclave inside one building. But the next celebrity took his love of airplanes much further. Number 8. John Travolta. Jumbo Air Aviation Estates, Florida. At number 8 is John Travolta. Travolta isn't simply a Hollywood superstar. He's also a passionate pilot. And instead of keeping his airplanes at an airport miles away from home, he decided to live somewhere that allowed him to bring the airport to his front door. Travolta became one of the first residents of Jumbo Air Aviation Estates in Florida. This isn't a normal gated community. It's a residential development built around a private airfield. Homes can connect to the runway through taxiways, allowing residents to essentially park aircraft close to their houses. Travolta's estate became famous for its aviation-focused design. For years, images of large aircraft sitting beside his home made the property one of the most recognizable celebrity residences in America. The entire Jumbo Air development encompasses roughly 550 acres. Travolta doesn't own all 550 acres, but his estate is one of the community's most famous properties. Think about that for a second. Most celebrities worry about having enough garage space for their Ferraris. John Travolta needed enough room for airplanes. And yet, number 7 makes even this aviation estate look small. Number 7. Rick Ross. The Promised Land, Georgia. At number 7 is rapper Rick Ross, and his Georgia estate has the perfect name, The Promised Land. The centerpiece is an enormous mansion originally built for boxing legend Evander Holyfield. Ross purchased the property in 2014. The mansion itself reportedly contains more than 100 rooms. There are dozens of bedrooms and bathrooms, enormous entertainment spaces, and one of the largest residential swimming pools in the United States. But the mansion isn't even the most impressive part. It's the land. The original estate covered more than 200 acres, and Ross subsequently expanded his footprint by purchasing additional neighboring land. At this point, you're no longer talking about a large backyard. You're talking about enough space for streets, dozens of houses, and an entire residential development. The estate is so large that it has even been used as a filming location. Parts of Coming to America were filmed there. Ross also uses the grounds for events and his famous car shows. Hundreds of vehicles can be displayed across the property without even making the estate feel crowded. That's how enormous it is. But the next celebrity has built something even closer to a private community. Number 6. Tyler Perry, Georgia. At number 6 is Tyler Perry. Perry's rise is one of Hollywood's greatest business success stories. He went from struggling playwright to billionaire filmmaker, producer, and studio owner, and his real estate reflects that success. Perry has accumulated enormous properties in Georgia over the years, but what makes his story particularly interesting is scale. He doesn't seem interested in ordinary celebrity mansions. He builds compounds. His projects have included enormous homes surrounded by large amounts of privately controlled land. And then there's Tyler Perry Studios. The studio complex occupies hundreds of acres on the former Fort McPherson military base in Atlanta. It's important to separate Perry's personal real estate from his business properties, but together, they demonstrate just how enormous his physical footprint in Georgia has become. Tyler Perry Studios itself functions almost like a private town. The property contains massive sound stages and elaborate permanent sets designed to resemble real-world locations. There's even a replica of the White House. Entire streets can exist inside a filmmaking complex controlled by Perry's company. He didn't just build a Hollywood studio, he essentially built his own miniature city for making movies. But number 5 owns thousands of acres in paradise. Number 5. Oprah Winfrey, Maui, Hawaii. At number 5 is Oprah Winfrey. Oprah has owned some extraordinary homes throughout her career, but her land holdings in Hawaii are on another level. Over the years, Oprah gradually accumulated huge amounts of property on the island of Maui. Instead of buying everything in one transaction, she assembled her holdings through multiple purchases. The result? Thousands of acres of Hawaiian land. Her Maui properties include large areas around Kula and Hana, and unlike a conventional celebrity mansion surrounded by a few acres, Oprah's holdings stretch across huge sections of countryside. The scale becomes easier to understand when you imagine turning the land into residential neighborhoods. A normal suburban development might fit hundreds of homes into a fraction of what Oprah controls, yet she largely preserved the land as open space, agricultural property, and private estate. She has also maintained a major residence in Montecito, California, another area famous for celebrity estates. But her Maui holdings are what earn her a place on this list, and we're still nowhere near the largest property. Number 4. George Lucas Skywalker Ranch, approximately 4,700 acres. At number 4 is the creator of Star Wars, George Lucas, and naturally, his ranch has an appropriately cinematic name, Skywalker Ranch. Located in Marin County, California, the property is absolutely enormous. Lucas began assembling land in the area in the late 1970s. Over time, the estate grew to approximately 4,700 acres. That's more than 7 square miles. But here's what's particularly interesting. Only a small portion of the land has actually been developed. Instead of covering everything with buildings, Lucas created a secluded creative retreat surrounded by thousands of acres of nature. Inside Skywalker Ranch are professional production facilities, screening rooms, and a roughly 300-seat theater. But it also has amenities that make it feel like a self-contained private community. There are vineyards, gardens, fitness facilities, a swimming pool, an observatory, and even its own fire station. There's also an artificial lake known as Ewok Lake. Skywalker Ranch isn't simply a celebrity home. It's an enormous private creative campus hidden inside thousands of acres of California countryside. And yet, number 3 did something even crazier. She didn't buy a ranch, she bought a town. Number 3. Kim Basinger, Braselton, Georgia. At number 3 is actress Kim Basinger, and this story sounds almost impossible. During the late 1980s, Basinger was one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Then, in 1989, she and a group of investors made an extraordinary purchase. They acquired a huge portion of Braselton, Georgia. The reported price? Approximately $20 million. But what exactly did they buy? Not one mansion, not one ranch. The deal reportedly included a supermarket, bank, stores, and a large industrial park, along with huge amounts of surrounding land. Contemporary reports describe the acquisition as encompassing roughly 1,700 acres. The idea was ambitious. Basinger reportedly hoped to help transform the area into a destination that could potentially include film and entertainment production. For a moment, one of Hollywood's biggest actresses effectively controlled a huge portion of a real American town. But the investment didn't end particularly well. Basinger later experienced serious financial difficulties, and her Braselton investment became part of that story. Still, when it comes to celebrities practically owning neighborhoods, few stories can compete with someone who actually bought much of a town. Except perhaps our final two. Number 2. Mark Zuckerberg. Kauai, Hawaii. More than 2,300 acres. At number 2 is Mark Zuckerberg, and his Hawaiian property is unlike almost anything else on this list. Zuckerberg began acquiring land on the island of Kauai more than a decade ago. Over time, those purchases grew into an enormous estate known as Kulau Ranch. Initially, reports described the property as encompassing approximately 1,400 acres. Then it expanded. In 2025, Zuckerberg reportedly purchased another 962 acres across the road. That pushed his overall holdings in the area beyond 2,300 acres. But the amount of land is only the beginning. Reports about the compound have described plans for 2 large central residences, guest houses, and numerous additional structures. And underground, things get even more interesting. Wired reported plans for an approximately 5,000 square foot underground shelter, connected to the main residences through a tunnel. The compound also includes agricultural operations and extensive infrastructure. Reports have described its own water systems, security operations, and numerous buildings. The overall investment associated with Zuckerberg's Hawaiian compound has reportedly reached hundreds of millions of dollars. At this point, calling it a mansion doesn't really make sense. It's more like a privately controlled territory. More than 2,300 acres, multiple residences, agriculture, private infrastructure, an underground shelter, and extensive security. It sounds like the property of a fictional billionaire, but Zuckerberg still doesn't come close to number 1, because our final celebrity didn't buy 2,000 acres or 5,000. He bought almost an entire island. Number 1. Larry Ellison, Lanai, Hawaii. Approximately 98% of the island. And at number 1 is billionaire Larry Ellison. The co-founder of Oracle has accumulated one of the largest personal fortunes in the world. And in 2012, he decided to make one of the most extraordinary celebrity real estate purchases ever. Ellison purchased approximately 98% of Lanai, not 98% of a neighborhood, not 98% of a luxury resort, approximately 98% of an inhabited Hawaiian island. Lanai covers roughly 140 square miles. Ellison's purchase reportedly included tens of thousands of acres, and this wasn't empty land. Lanai contains roads, businesses, homes, resorts, and communities. Of course, Ellison doesn't personally own every private residence on the island, and government-owned land isn't his either, but his companies control the overwhelming majority of the island's land. Since acquiring Lanai, Ellison has invested heavily in its infrastructure and businesses. Luxury resorts have been renovated, agricultural and sustainability projects have been developed, and Ellison has described ambitions to use the island as a model for sustainable living. But regardless of what you think about those plans, the scale of his ownership is almost impossible to comprehend. Taylor Swift owns 5 spectacular acres overlooking the ocean. Rick Ross has hundreds of acres surrounding his mansion. George Lucas assembled approximately 4,700 acres for Skywalker Ranch. Mark Zuckerberg controls more than 2,300 acres on Kauai. And Larry Ellison, he effectively owns almost an entire Hawaiian island. Forget owning the neighborhood. At this level of wealth, you own the place where the neighborhood exists. And those were 10 celebrities whose real estate holdings are so enormous that they practically own entire neighborhoods. And if you want to see more incredible mansions, private islands, and billionaire properties, make sure to subscribe. Hey, you like the video? So don't forget about leave your like and comment, and tell some suggestions of another videos, and hopefully we gonna do it. All about channel Dios to satisfy your curiosity.